Now our next speaker, I think as you can see by what's on the screen here, some people may not be familiar with the word. And of course, if I would say something like Baubiology, and of course Wolfgang Maes would say something like Baubiologie or something like that. He knows how to say it, and he's going to explain what it is, how it affects your lives, and what you can do to avail yourselves of information that will make your living habitat much more suited to good health. Normally, well, shall we say a week or so ago, I would have had to say this gentleman is from West Germany. He is a registered professional in Baubiology and also a noted journalist. But this week I get to say he's from Germany because, as you know, it is a unified Germany. So, if you will, let's continue that applause for Wolfgang Maes. Thank you. Go get it. Thank you.
Vern and Steve Ross, thank you for inviting me to this World Research Foundation Congress. Thank you for the chance speaking about Baubiologie, like we call it in German. I think we have to create a new American word today, because it's not really common in England or in America. You are speaking about building biology or about sick syndrome, house sick syndrome, something like that. I would say just take the German word Baubiologie and transform it a little bit to Baubiology, like you did it with kindergarten, and so we have it. The Baubiology deals with the relation between human beings and their building environment. The German word for Bau means house, home. Bios is, like you know, life, the animated, nature-directed world. And logos means creativity, order, harmony, health, vitality, wholeness. The Baubiology is our closest environment protection, and environment starts at home. The Baubiology aims at the implementation of a healthy building environment. For more than 15 years, Baubiologists are trained in Germany who promote this approach and are active in consulting, analyzing, and sanitating houses, apartments, workshop places being under construction or renovation. A main aspect of the Baubiology is the examination of homes and sleeping rooms. The health risk from environment stress factors is particularly high in these areas. The main part of our life we live at home, especially during the period of unconscious, regenerative and relaxing sleep. We are very sensitive to all sorts of artificial, electrical, magnetic, radioactive, toxic or room climatic, but also natural geological stimuli. The task of a modern biological, I have to get used to it too, inspection is to analyze the multiple fields, rays, gases, and other corresponding environment risks with sensitive physical instruments in a reproducible way. Thereby, risks can be detected, described, evaluated, and excluded. Proposals for sanitating try to make the sick home, the sick sleeping room, healthy again. Ladies and gentlemen, you have asked me to speak on this big conference about the interesting and gripping topic, stress from current and radiation, the sick sleeping room, and its successful treatment, and to share my experiences and ideas with you. May I shortly introduce myself? My name is, like you know, Wolfgang Maes, and I've been journalist at a great German daily for about 17 years. And during my free time, I've been very busy dealing with a quite complicated problem, how electromagnetic fields act on biological processes. Since I always had an E in physics at school, and never had been really very interested in this subject, my decision to work at this topic did not come spontaneously. After a long time of despair seeking for the reasons of continuous complaints in my life, many chronic diseases led me finally think of a building and sleeping room examination. Numerous activities of orthodox medicine and other, sometimes outrageous alternative approaches did not generate the desired success. I remained more or less sick for a long time, for many years. My odyssey brought me to all possible and impossible authorities, and the health insurance companies continued to pay. The medical specialists found me a tough nut to crack. I was not well. Quality of life, what was that about? I followed the advice of a doctor and called a professional Baubiologist. He detected many very strong artificial electrical and magnetic fields in my room. In electricity installation of my old house, with a lot of defects and deficient grounding, too many electric sets like clock radio, stereo set, the answering machine, TV set, and some yards of live extension cords beside and under my bed radiated like mad and put my body on artificial high voltage. The fields of the fuse box within the range of 1 yard of my bed added another strong contribution. I followed the many sanitating advices of the expert, cleared a strongly magnetic spring mattress away from my bed and an electrostatically charged synthetic carpet out of my sleeping room, and felt a lot better during the weeks, months, and years afterwards. The first practical success after a long period of suffering. My complaints decreased very soon. 2 months later, I did not need medicine any longer. The doctors seemed to be more confused than delighted. This happened about 8 to 9 years ago. Looking backwards, I'm very grateful, since those changes had been the most constructive in my life. I looked for and found a lot of complicated but also understandable books. With enthusiasm, I participated in seminars and met experts who were eager to help. I found many very expensive measuring instruments and made experiments during many nights. I was fascinated about the studies of Baubiology and naturopathy and invested the remainder of my limited time for that purpose. I thank you in this moment. My wife too, she had to spend away several days and hours and months just letting me studying Baubiology. I left my job as a newspaper journalist and turned my hobby into a new profession. I am executing, surveying, and consulting in Baubiology for living rooms, sleeping rooms, office buildings, consulting rooms of doctors and real estates. I am lecturing, organizing seminars, doing public relation, and writing for scientific magazines today. I cooperate with more than 60 doctors which refer clients with special problems to me, control my measurements from their orthodox medical and naturopath aspects, and confirm the success of implemented sanitations. Ladies and gentlemen, the core of my lecture will be the biological risks which we can change and improve with individual responsibility. TV towers and radar stations, military intelligence installations and telecommunication radio relays, satellites and mobile telephones with their typical high-frequency electromagnetic fields cannot be removed so easily from our civilization. nor can cars, concrete, smoking, chimneys, dangerous garbage, polluted rivers and lakes. Therefore, we should prefer speaking about what we really can change if we just want to change it. That are the many electric and magnetic, radioactive and geologic disturbances at home, at our working place too. These generate especially large and often totally unnecessary risks beyond calculation, because they can be avoided and we can do without them. I will draw your attention this time to these fields and show you where they like to hide themselves very often in our electric installations at home, in devices, in many synthetic materials, in metals like steel, in construction materials, but also in the geological underground of this earth. Various scientific findings show that the human being, during his regenerating passive sleep in the night, reacts 10 to 100 times less resistance against stimuli. His immunity system, his adaptation capacity, and his vegetative processes only function on a very low level. On daytime, however, the body has very active functions for counter-regulation and resistance against stress. The doctor and father of Baubiologie, a German Dr. Hubert Palm, once told me that the sleeping room is the workshop of the body. At night, repairing takes place of things that have gone wrong during daytime. A sick sleeping room cultivates sickness. And even Paracelsus has taught already more than 400 years ago, a sick bed is a safe tool to ruin one's health. Therefore, most of my arguments refer to the most important 20 square feet in your home, to your bed, where it is placed and to its surroundings. Since years, I've made more than about 3,000 inspections of sleeping places as a Baubiologist. Many times I've learned that a good and undisturbed sleeping place is the main base for health. We will speak about electrical and magnetic alternating fields, about electrical and magnetic direct fields, about radioactivity, and about terrestrial radiation. The first one, please. Electrical alternating fields derive from electrical alternating voltage. These are 220 volts with a frequency of 50 Hertz in Germany, and here 110 volts with 60 Hertz in the USA. All sockets and junction boxes, all cables and devices with mains connection are radiating also if there is no current. That means no current consumption. Normally, an electrical installation with its existing inevitable, whatever that means, fields is modest in its radiation extension, and the biological risks are minimal. Normally means if the installation is technically well done, installed properly, grounded according to the regulations, without cracked cables or defects, without any supra-electrification. Under such conditions, the follow-up fields are in the size of square feet, and connections of our body to these emitters is not very probably, provided you are in a sufficient distance. But I realize in many rooms fields not in the size of a square feet, but of square yards, as the consequence of installation diseases, hassle, defect or not existing grounding, and too many cables and electrical devices just in the range of the body. In the bed or nearby, we sometimes have arrangements like in a jet cockpit or at high-tech computer places of a manager. The producers are not always evident, often they are hidden. Walls, rooms, and even whole houses can be energized due to faulty technical conditions. The small, cheap clamp and standard lamps can generate many more fields than a jet cockpit, since they rarely are grounded. And that happens, as I said, even when they are not switched on. Only the power supply line is sufficient, not necessary fields all over the night. If a person is connected, just like an antenna, to these outstanding large fields, an electrical body potential is generated, which may be 10,000 times larger than the existing one in our natural organism. If it often happens that my voltmeter shows hundreds of millivolt or even some volt when I make a body test for a person lying in bed. In some extreme cases, I saw a cheap test screwdriver flashing at the skin and the tongue of a person being under voltage of artificial 50 or 60 hertz. You don't believe it? Put yourself on an electrical pad and ask your partner to make the test at your body. Just try it. All that generates stress. Our precious potential for resistant wanes. The body resistance must work on extreme level. On the other hand, there are thousands of case studies when a simple sanitating of electrical alternating fields produced amazing and challenging health improvements. Let us now not listen to what the skeptics and the warning voices say about the problem, but to those who are in charge for electricity production and sell it. The German power Essen reports in an information dated from 1984 that a nerve cell realizes an electrical stimulus above 15 to 20 millivolt. And it goes on, within alternating voltage, the sensibility is dependent from the frequency. The highest sensibility of nerves is around 50 to 60 hertz. Technical application can disturb electrical, physical processes. So far, the power supply, when only 15 to 20 millivolts lead to nerve stress, that raises a lot of questions. What happens in a person when I detect electrical potentials of some volts at and within his body, which is connected voltage fields in his bed? What happens when the test screwdriver flashes? That is more than 40 volts. Nobody really seems to know. No wonder the soft scientific researchers refer to short-time tests with healthy test persons during the active daytime period. Long-time tests with senior and ill persons, children, sensitive persons, and unborn children do not yet exist, not to mention any reference to the sensible unconscious sleeping phase. My experience shows that the importance of the biological risk of all artificial electrical is much higher than we thought so far. Otherwise, what other would be the reason of recurrent spontaneous healing successes of seriously ill persons after they have been liberated from those chronic stimuli? I am not a scientist. I am a journalist. I have knowledge due to my experiments and experiences. Before this auditorium, there is no debate necessary that we have billions of electrical functions running every second in our organism. Cells have an electrical potential, measurable currents flow in nerve fibers. Medicine has defined the time of death by the end of electrical energy in the brain. The electrocardiogram measures the electrical processes of the heart in the range of millivolt. The electroencephalogram, the processes in the brain, in the even more sensitive range of microvolts. The cardiac pacemaker generates with about 1 millivolt the unquestionable biological result of contracting the heart muscle. There is no life without electrical voltages. All of our billion of cells are procuring more than 100,000 biophysical and biochemical functions in 1 second. So I measure electrical alternating fields at house inspections at first in the room. One can detect the extension of radiation for walls, cables, devices, sockets which are under voltage with sensitive field sondes. This gives you a first impression of the order of the fields and makes conclusions possible in regard to the technical quality of the electrification. Such a measuring does not allow an exact judgment of the physical load from electrical voltages for the body. For that, you need a further measuring, and this time directly at the human being who lies in bed. I give you some little and short hints for a healthy sleeping place without electrical alternating fields. First, put as few electrical devices in the sleeping room as possible. Don't try the unimpossible, but try the possible. Draw off all plugs, because switching off, like you know the devices, is often not enough. Do it without TV set in the sleeping room. Computers, recorders, fluorescent lamps, electric blankets, pads, dimmers near the bed, and dispense with electrically adjustable beds and water beds. Check for grounded cables and devices. Lay, if it's possible, only screened, shielded mains, and switch off the fuse for the sleeping room at night. Protect yourself against the fields from neighboring rooms with conductive foils made from aluminium or copper or wire screens. You fix that on the radiating wall and care for a good grounding, for example at the heater. Let us ginger up this lecture with some of my interesting experiences. One case study comes to my mind. It refers to particularly delicate new approach, beds which you can adjust with an electrical motor. A dentist slept in such a luxurious model and had racking pains in the spine, migraine and heart attacks, dizziness for a long time, for years. The bed was not enough. He added an electrical pad, but it is sufficient that bed and pad have a main connection to release huge electrical fields. That means even if the bed and the pad is not in function, nevertheless the body lies in a field as long as the leads are in the plug. I measured 35,000 millivolts, this is 35 volts, at the body of the client lying in his bed. Imagine 35 volts in the brain, in the heart, in the lung, everywhere. After removing the plug from the electric pad, the outstanding voltage potential went down to still remarkable extreme 12,000 millivolts. After removing the bed plug from the electric pad, the outstanding voltage potential went down to still remarkable extreme 600 millivolt. And these 600 millivolt were the result in defects in the cables of the sleeping room wall. And we built in a switch-off relay, and this stopped the connection of the body because no electrical field remained. This measuring instrument showed then 0 millivolt. The client called already after a few weeks. The unbearable pains had subsided gradually and finally had disappeared completely forever. Another extreme case, a healthy, vital person in the age of 40 became extremely ill during a few weeks. The clinomobile came every other night. The man was despaired because the doctors could not find anything. In the hospital, the dangerous symptoms abated every time. At home, they reappeared again. Heart attacks, disturbed circulations, mysterious and intolerable pain. The person could not make a sensible thought any longer, fear, depression. Again calling the first aid doctor, the client was convinced to die soon. A body measurement in the bed resulted in 155,000 millivolt. That means a total of 155 volt. In Germany we have 220 volts. This is even more than you have in America. The reason? The electrical heating of his waterbed was defective. After repairing, the fields did not appear anymore. The sporting and dynamic gentleman was obviously filled with new life again, and the clinomobile did not come again. Mr. 155 volt was healthy. Not less than 6,000 millivolt, 6 volt voltage was found in the body of a young man in Marin County, California. He lived in his home for 6 years, and during this 6 years he never, not one time, never could sleep for one whole night and was continuously overstrained and stressed. Without exception, he woke up every morning 1 hour prior to the alarm clock, and though being dog-tired, he could not sleep again. In this case, again switching off the fuse of the sleeping room removed the strong fields from the cabled walls too. Already the next morning, the embarrassed person did not hear the shrilling of the alarm clock and slept away for 5 hours the first time. During a few weeks, well-being and healthy sleep returned, and as a little side effect, also the strong pains in the back during the last years disappeared. A 13-year-old schoolboy, modern dressed in black leather and ornamented with a modest punk hairstyle, had been a bedwetter from the age of 5. The poor boy had to undergo all sorts of treatment for years and had to go once a week to some sort of psycho guy. For 1 year, he had to wear every night a device, I don't know the English name for that. It's something like a corset, a so-called ringing trousers, which gave loud alarm with a humidity sensor when he wetted again. Poor boy. In the bathroom was the key to put off the alarm. Incredible. The fields exploded from the desolate electrical installation. 4,500 millivolts touched the body of the boy in his bed. The remedy was simple. Again, switching off the fuse. The result, null, 0 millivolt. The bed remained dry from the first night. for 2 years now, no longer any bedwetting. The case study, it may be impressive. I could report about many other things, many more case studies. The result is always the same. Electricity has its price, not only when you get the bill. Why those effects are produced in some persons and not in others, I don't know. I will not deprive science of its tasks. I only can report from my experiences, and these effects exist for many persons. We have not much research until now. The nature, which is immense diversity, asks millions of questions for which we have no answer until today. I am glad to have found the best guarantor, advocate, lawyer and yardstick for my work, and this is the nature. If nature is in order, then we are in order too. If nature is out of order, it is silly to believe that this will not have consequences in the long run, because then we live in an unnatural disorder. Nature takes revenge. It reacts biologically. Electrical alternating fields are contrary to the order of nature. They never exist, nor have ever existed in the nature. Neither the field value nor the frequency can be found in nature. Let us seek from Alaska till Brazil, from Siberia till Australia, at the summits of the mountains or in the valley, in the jungle or in the desert, you nowhere will find a living creature which has a voltage potential of some volts with a frequency of 50 or 60 hertz in his body, as long as the globe has turned. Never and nowhere. Nature is the yardstick. Who does not understand this fact has to face consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, the second stress factor is magnetic alternating fields. The electrification of our life brings two completely different radiators beside the electric alternating fields, which are dependent, like you now know, from the voltage to which we referred above. The magnetic alternating fields, which are dependent from the live current, produce additional unnatural risks. These magnetic fields are generated from current-consuming devices which are switched on and remain in operation. If a current flows in cables and devices of an electrical installation, the corresponding fields are mostly small. Important pre-requirement is, however, that the technical installation is properly done. If that is not the case, the consequences can become large and beyond calculation. Even in certain switched-on electrical sets like, again, clock radios and all products which are run with transformers, the fields are so large that they can be detected even in a distance of more than 1 yard. That is the same again for TV sets, fuse boxes, fluorescent tubes, computers, machines, motors, freezers, heaters, and air conditioners. A critical situation exists because you cannot, or only rarely, sanitate them when electromagnetic fields, as they are often called too, reach our rooms from outside. High tension lines, low voltage overhead lines and underground cables in roads, transformer houses, and current of the railway can penetrate construction material fitments and the body in bad cases. Especially the biological effect of these magnetic alternating fields produced by high tension lines has been examined by researchers of all countries. Numerous researchers report the connection with all sorts of diseases, especially with degenerative processes and cancer. Leukemia of children living in houses near high tension lines is higher according to various Swedish and American studies. The effects on various hormonal processes are researched. Remarkable connections with suicides are detected. Even the Federal Health Agency in Germany recommends large-scale distances from high-tension lines for development plants as a precaution. 4 years ago, the power supply company of the American Houston in Texas was convicted to pay more than $25 million compensation to a private school. A high-tension line over the school campus was too risky, for more than 3,000 children. The judges made the company to move the line. Under continuous pressure of the people in the Canadian province of Manitoba, the power supply company agreed to buy up all houses along a 100 miles long high tension line to avoid damage claims. In 1988, a district court in the province of Torino, Italy, ordered the moving of the 300 kilovolt high tension line and the raising of warning signs. I could not believe my eyes and ears when I saw during my last stay in the USA a public warning after the evening news. High tension lines are only for a short while because of the too high health hazard for human beings. But there is no reason to relax only because you do not live under a high intention line. One fact is alarming. Many devices of our modern daily life produce the same fields in the same order of magnitude as those which you can measure under huge high intention lines if the body comes sufficiently close to them. When the electric alarm clock on the nightstand in only 8 inches away from your head is placed there, so it is a great pity, but also the truth, that it puts every night for 8 hours a firework of electromagnetic fields into your head, which really corresponds to that of a high tension line, and you can avoid that. For a TV set, it is sufficient if it is put on standby function to produce a strong and unnecessary field. The fields are not getting bigger when you switch the TV on. The baby phone, an accumulator charger, the motor of the freezer on the other side of the wall, the pump of an aquarium, radios and tape recorders, they all produce fields like the intention lines when you come close to them. Keep away from those devices, at least when you not really need them, and this is always at night. Often transformers consume current in switch-off time and radiate enormously. If you have a low-volt lamp on your nightstand and the transformer is at the plug directly beside or behind your bed, then you have a non-stop consumption of current for which you have to pay, and fields which you have to endure, also after it is switched off. Why? Because you are switching only the lamp, not the transformer, which still has connection to the power supply. Many devices have such built-in and therefore invisible transformers. They all work according to the same pattern. The devices can be switched, but not the transformers. The magnetic alternating fields penetrate building materials, walls, ceilings without absorption, and the human bodies too. The only remedy is to switch off and remove the producing device, or to keep a sufficient distance and avoid contact. Basically, you have to take into account influences from neighboring rooms. The final of Boris Becker does not come to your own TV screen, but via alternating field also into the body of the sleeping neighbor 3 yards away. You should take a 3 yards distance also from bathrooms and kitchens. They are normally wise full of field-intensive devices and installations. Electromagnetic fields cannot be removed, and we all don't want that because we enjoy it too from our everyday life, but from the night. Illness is very often the known and logical consequence of uninterrupted stress. The continuous, unnatural electromagnetic attack against the body and soul has to be stopped immediately sometimes. I measure magnetic alternating fields locally with sensitive sondes and with induction coils. The measuring instruments react to the field's loads with optical and acoustic signals. The measuring unit of the magnetic field strength is ampere per meter, and I prefer to detect the magnetic induction in Tesla. Again, some devices for a healthy sleeping place without magnetic alternating fields. Remove all electrical devices who are running where current is on in your sleeping room. Keep distance to live wires in the walls, to fuse boxes, freezers, boilers, TV sets, also if they are behind a wall. Care for trouble-free, installed and well-grounded electrical and sanitary facilities without potential differences. Do without fluorescent tubes, dimmers, halogen and low-volt lamps, and remove all switched-off devices with transformers from the plug. Cut any electrical underfloor heating of the power system. Check for a minimum distance of about 150 to 200 yards from high tension lines. Avoid the current carrying into your house with a roof stand, and object against overhead lines with low voltage fixed directly above your house. Protest against transformer houses which are adjacent directly to your home. For any valid evaluations, one needs local measurements and advice from an expert. You can contact an independent Baubiologist. Here, ladies and gentlemen, some particularly interesting and remarkable case studies of my examinations again. I know a dentist practice in which 2 consulting rooms seem as if chinked. Some assistant became sick there, others had headache. One assistant collapsed regularly and refused intuitively to enter these 2 rooms. The dentist did not perceive anything, but he liked experimenting. According to my measurements, to my measuring research, especially in these 2 rooms, the fields of the fluorescent lamps detached from the ceiling and very near to the heads of the assistants were extremely high in comparison with the other rooms. According to my advice, the intermediate units of the lamps were exchanged for expensive and field-free electronic intermediate units, and the high values disappeared after the exchange of the intermediate units. And also, the dentist was enthusiastic the complaints of the assistants. In a German magazine, I have reported about a doctor in Cologne who healed patients with migraine only by moving clock radios and electrical alarms from the nightstand which had been too near to the head. Meanwhile, I know already 24 persons which had migraine and now have a clear head after the removal of those field-intensive, horrible gadgets. There was a sweet little baby in a German town called Koblenz, which smiled at all persons during the whole day and charmed all adults. Only at bedtime the charm vanished and the nice little baby became a loud howling bear. All night long, the same nerve-wracking process. Every night, scream attacks for hours till the baby slept when completely exhausted. My measuring showed a 600 nanotesla, this is quite much, in the crib, in a distance of 8 inches, and between the rods of the bed, one of these little cheap control devices called baby phone in Germany was put into the plug. With this set, you can hear the crying of the baby 3 floors above. The device was removed. From that moment on, the baby slept the whole night through, being silent as a mouse, so did the parents too. Later, they called, "Little Sarah keeps smiling now at night too." Ladies and gentlemen, I may also mention that I have met some extremely electrosensitive persons. They react so intensely to such fields that living in our civilization has become a torture for them. They even react to short and particularly intense field generations, which one can measure at vacuum cleaners, kitchen gadgets, office machines and TV sets, with dizziness, pains, and even fainting. I remark in passing that many measurements which I have made in the USA have shown remarkable, strong electromagnetic fields in living homes. Often, the defectively or not grounded installations and the normal criss-cross of overhead lines have been the cause. I have found especially high field strengths in the dream cities of Western California, where some street blocks have been totally cabled like cobwebs. I realize every year more that in an unexpected and strange way a lot of allergies disappear with the electromagnetic fields, allergies which apparently seem to have no direct relation to the fields. Allergies against food, toxic substances, natural stimuli of poles, animal hairs and dust, contact allergies, skin allergies. Again, I have no answer, only questions. What is the reason that a dust allergy in the house can disappear with the elimination of an electromagnetic field? What is the relation between the hair of a cat and high extension lines? Milk protein with clock radios? I don't know yet. I only know that it is. The third factor, the third stress factor, is electrical direct fields, elektrostatische Ladungen. Voltage is not the only producer of the electrical fields. Synthetic can produce them too. One important difference: the voltage in our homes work with low frequency. This results in, like you know already, alternating fields. Plastic are without frequency, and static, they produce direct fields. Electrical direct fields in our everyday life are often called electrostatic charges or electrostatic loadings. That always refers to those electrical powers which are generated at plastic materials and synthetic materials. Carpets, wallpapers, furniture, many screens of computers too, TV sets and terminals are producing electrostatic charges too if they are not screened. All of you know the sensations when you realize an electric shock having touched door handles, handrails or telephones. Many think they have been electrified. But the opposite is the fact they have themselves discharged. The door handle has electrified itself on you. And this potential in the body is huge, several thousand volt. If it would be less, you would not realize it as an electric shock when being discharged. Nature knows these powers too. Wool, silk, leather, hair of animal can be electrostatically charged too, but the natural potentials are considerably less than the artificial ones. They discharge much quicker in contrast to synthetic, which discharges only very slow or not even at all. And what is very important too, the natural charges only show a plus field. They are positively polarized. The artificial fields are often negatively polarized. Beside their unnaturally high potentials, they show minus charges. But minus charges never came to existence since evolution had started. Beside the direct influences of electrostatic loads on the body, one realizes also other substantial changes in the climate of a room. The electricity of the air increases dramatically, and the ionization of the air is changed in its natural harmony. Potentials of such a value normally only exist for a few hours during the year. When finally a thunderstorm starts after a long period of sultry, muggy weather, persons who are sensitive to changes of the weather know very well how badly they feel in such moments. Also, other extreme weather conditions are accompanied with higher electricity of the air, föhn, smog, high pressure. This again causes heavy health complaints. Electrostatic loads brutally violate the climate of our rooms. We are breathing dead air, put ourselves under high tension, and look forward to the next vacation. The only reasonable thing is put everything with synthetic out of your bedroom. The place where it belongs to is just the garbage. Electrostatic loads electrostatic loads are so very often in our environment that I think when 1,000 years later persons will excavate into our age, they will be astonished how long can plastic keep. Mountains of plastic and symbols of our time. In a healthy home, in a healthy sleeping room, you should put only natural materials. Paper, textile, cork, wood, stone, linoleum, cotton, wool, sisal, felt, goat hair, linen, viscose, leather, whatever it is. We know the biological risk of electrostatic loads, particularly what screen radiation is concerned. The high voltage of the tube produces a strong potential and radiates vehemently towards human beings. Pregnant women, so the researchers say, should not work at computers to avoid risks for the unborn child. What is less known, synthetic carpets can produce just the same fields like screens in quality and quantity. Here we have dozens of square yards. On the screen it is just a half. A valid calculation, one carpet can be 100 screens. Children have to suffer most due to their little height. They are especially near to the source of the radiation. They crawl on the loaded carpets. They have always physical contact, and they are close to the ruined air with their breath. They snuggle with extremely loaded synthetic pads, fields from screens directly in front of their faces. I know highly allergic babies who immediately got rid of their symptoms after dozens of plastic animals had been removed from their bed. The fourth stress factor is the stress from magnetic direct fields. Ladies and gentlemen, I also warn you of magnetic steel parts in, at, under, or direct near your bed. They produce artificial magnetic fields which reach the sleeping body unchecked and can penetrate it. For an impressive presentation of these magnetic fields, you do not even need expensive, sensitive electronic magnetometers. A simple $10 worth compass is sufficient. The mattress and move it along the sleeping surface from head to foot, very slowly and calmly. Look at the compass needle. You might be surprised that the needle shows to the north at the head, in the middle of the bed to the south, and at the feet to east or southwest. That is the pattern of totally twisted and disturbed terrestrial magnetic field. That means the natural magnetic balance of our Earth is brought so much out of order from artificial magnetic fields, steel, that even a compass cannot find its point of reference north any longer. The cause for that biologically risk spectacle is, which one can demonstrate very easily, is exclusively steel when it is magnetized. Artificial magnetic fields are also produced at heaters and loudspeaker boxes, at tubes of the sanitary facilities, at machines and devices again. Everything which is made of steel. Often the extension of the fields, like I told you, is very, very small. Only a too close contact, like it is with a mattress, of the body produces a risk which, however, can be avoided. Even the metal parts of spectacle frames can be sometimes, very rarely, so field intensive that I have proved their existence within a distance of 6 inches before and beside the head with a compass needle. Permanent magnetic fields in the brain. Customers called a well-known international producer of spectacles on that problem after I had made some corresponding tests. With the spectacle frame, they complained about headache and dizziness and lack of concentration and other symptoms which disappeared without spectacles. The managers of the company asked me about the methods and results of my measuring, and we had a correspondence. After a little while, the embarrassed producer confirmed my results and gave orders to the research department to find a corresponding solution. Today, the big company produces its spectacles without any magnetic fields. Medical experts and researchers see a close connecting between locally present permanent magnetic field and corresponding local diseases. That exactly fits well to my experience too. Keep your bed absolutely free of metal. The whole creature lives and orientates itself in a vital, natural, terrestrial magnetic field for millions of years. The body needs this magnetic field, and it never has to be disturbed. Important functions are dependent to him. So every degree declination of the compass is one too much. Nobody knows what happens in the body. Some researchers are pointing cautiously on the relation between artificial static magnetic fields and heart attacks, on disturbed circulation, on polyarthritis and cramps of the muscles, on changes of the cell membrane, on disorders in the enzymes and the metabolism. The US Department of Health gave the clinic and statistic proof that cancer diseases, malformations since birth, and stillborn children are directly related to anomalies of terrestrial magnetic fields. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our last stress factor. We don't have the time to talk about radon gas and toxic things. So we come to our last stress factor, and this is stress from the Earth radiation. If the topic is the Earth radiation, water veins, dislocations, and the so-called geological disturbances, then the uninformed layman associates mysteriously garnished hocus pocus. If I disregard the level of sensual assumptions of the swing of a rod or a pendulum, then I will learn quickly that one can detect different parameters in the electromagnetic area. For years, sensitive electronic measuring verify the old knowledge about the Earth radiation. We all know that the Earth, in fact the whole life, radiates as a natural process. There exists such a strong terrestrial magnetic field, and there exists a very strong natural radioactive radiation from the Earth too, all over the globe. We are born amid these manifold radiating processes, and I have not the smallest doubt that they are right, important, healthy, and life-protecting. But there are also conspicuous zones with radiation intensities which are different from the norm you can measure everywhere. If I measure always the same values during a longer line, then this radiation intensity can change suddenly with in a very limited zone, and I find totally different values. Sometimes these zones of more intensive radiation are frequent and can be detected every other yard. Sometimes you find them only after a longer search and in large intervals. This is locally very different. Above geological disturbances, geopathic stress, or however you call it, you can measure the distortion of the terrestrial magnetic field similar to magnetic steel. Here, the compass is not the right device because the declination are so little that they cannot generate any substantial swing. But sensitive magnetometers can easily make these distortions visible. The environment of the air ions has changed too. After 100 of tests, I can say, with special ionometers, these are electronic instruments which measure the number of small air ions in the air, you can detect regularly increased measurement values above disturbances, particularly in the range of positive air ions. Another fact, above geological disturbances, the human skin resistance changes quite quickly. The corresponding measurements are known as georhythmogram or electrogeobioscopy. The georhythmogram measures the skin resistance of a person from hand to hand with simple electrodes and a fitting ohm meter. The much more exact electrogeobioscopy measures between one hand and the points of acupuncture of the other. Work is done here with special electrodes and devices which are also known from the electroacupuncture. My electrogeobioscopic measurements are using test devices which are well tried in the medicine too, for example, the Aschoff test or Mora or Vega. When the skin resistance of a test person is normally wise at 40 kiloohm, the values over geopathic stress go up till 100, 200 or even more kiloohms. Particularly interesting is the fifth possibility approach to measure terrestrial radiations. Above geological disturbances, you will detect significant rises of the natural radioactivity. That means, do I receive the natural and everywhere existing radioactive radiation of the environment with sensitive radiometers, then I will get certainly above the so-called disturbance zones 100% and more higher values. And that is only from gamma and neutron rays. So there is one more chance to control the geopathic stress, not only in the lodging or in the sleeping room of the people. You can control it with medical tests too. There are several medical tests in Germany which take body liquid, blood for example, and find out if a person is lying with his bed in these geological zones or not. And I have the luck to work in a real double-blind test with a lot of doctors in Germany who do that diagnosis. Ladies and gentlemen, I am coming to the end of my little lecture, and you see, I tried, and I hope I have presented this complex and complicated topic as easy as it is possible. And I am deeply convinced, and I say that before this auditorium, that it is malpractice in the sense of a holistic medical diagnosis and therapy not to look at the sleeping place of the patient. The seminar on Sunday will go much deeper. I will show you some instruments and measurements, and a colleague of mine, Mr. Helmut Ziehe, he is the leader of the Institute for Baubiologie in Clearwater, Florida. This is the only institute for Baubiology in the USA. He is with me and you, and we both will do some experiments, and we want to answer your questions then. There is a little desk with information material from Mr. Ziehe in the neighbor room. And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and it was really good to be with you. Thank you. Lass ich liegen.
Before you go, I want to be sure and give Wolfgang Maes a plaque commemorative of his being here, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
I had a nice
Excellent.
time. Thank
Just
you.
a reminder, too.